Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Euphoria, Season 1, Episode 5. So, when I go through this episode, because I couldn't have been bothered to actually review it yesterday when I actually saw this episode, because I needed some time to just decompress from this episode, and just do I really feel how I feel about this episode? I really needed to take some time away from the show and really assess how I felt about this episode. And I can't come up with any conclusion but the exact same conclusion of which that I had yesterday. I can't believe we have one character who is to have the name Maddie, and she is the most laziest character that I have ever seen upon this show. And we have to have her whole entire backstory about how really lazy she is. How she had gotten by upon her looks, and she had gone on and just humped her way through life, and we're supposed to be just feel like we've gotten the worth upon this episode. Just say that this is to be man, solid episode, man. Just how is it that we've gotten to this point on this show where they're okay? Man, if anything, I would have really just wanted to watch throughout an entire episode of someone sleeping. And I think we could have gone on and that would equal the amount of effort that is to be put into this episode. Because, I'm sorry, there is nothing really creative about this episode. Ooh, we're watching a bit from Casino, the Robert De Niro movie. Why am I watching the show? Why am I watching the show? They're recycling footage from other episodes, obviously. I'm like, why am I watching the show? They're going on, and the only real viable thing upon this episode to make it watchable, if there is such a thing, is the whole Nate and Maddie thing, and that's it. Really, we go on and we have stuff that feels like the identical last episode. Or I don't know how many times we're just seeing in this episode people just laying around doing nothing. Talking about stuff that is to just be like, oh, well, I could have already understood that this character is to go into this direction because she has nowhere else to go. AKA, what Rue does in this episode is to obviously be just like, well, of course, that's what her direction of her character goes, because there's nothing left for her to do at this point, but to, of course, be who she is in this episode. So yeah. So I guess the most interesting out of this episode, is to be the Nate and Maddie stuff. And any of the characters that I guess I was to like, that is now flushed down the toilet through this episode. So basically everyone has just gone on, and now everything is reset to anything that I thought was good in the past is to now just be man, they're using none of it now. And so I guess that was just a brief glimpse of me enjoying this show, to then turn around and just me going okay, this needs to pay out at some point, right? This needs to, I need to, have this, kind of episode that doesn't really have this thing that I've gone on and said quite frequently upon this review, which is to say the SV word, which I don't think I want to go on and dub fairly often, because really I've said it far too much and people will get annoyed. So, with that said, let's just go into this thing called spoilers, because there's not a whole lot in this show. So let's go on and let's go into that double five time territory. This episode is pointless. Just go on to the next episode. It's okay. You just watch the recap upon the next episode. You'll feel like you've seen the show. There's nothing that matters in this episode, so let's go into it. So we go on and we have the backstory of Maddie that doesn't need to have been shown to us at all. Because we, of course, have this girl who is to be going on and doing pageantry. And so there obviously is to be that thing that is to say that Maddie had gotten by her good looks for the longest time. That's what the show says. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just paraphrasing what the show is basically saying. So, hence why I have the review that I have, because I'm paraphrasing what the show is to tell me. So, Maddie is to go on and do pageantry, and then we go on and we have Maddie that at some point is to stop going and doing pageantry because we find a news report that a guy had gone on and touched certain girls. And so Maddie's mother is to go and tell Maddie that she no longer wants her to do pageants because of this story. And so Maddie was fine about that because she never had one goal, one dream, one nothing upon her life anyways, because she's a lazy log of a person. And we just go on and start to see that instead of Maddie coming up with her own idea of who she's supposed to be, she's going on and seeing a number of other people and analyzing them and trying to basically mimic or parrot or whatever who they are and come up with a clear consensus of who she should be by reflecting upon other people, making it to where, what is the point of this character? Where we, of course, have Maddie's mother, who is to go on and perform pedicures for a number of people at this, what I call it, salon? Not quite sure. So we go on and we have Maddie, who is to think less of her mother, simply because Maddie is working for a living and is to go on and perform pedicures to these number of people that are to basically be people who I guess weirdly Maddie is to strive to become. So we fast forward at some point in Maddie's life to go on and have Maddie, who is to find Nate, who is to attract Nate by performing a dance number of sorts, meaning that Maddie is to do something other than being a lazy log of a character. And so, just being honest, I'm not criticizing the actor or actress that is to play this role. I am criticizing the show for writing this character this way. So Maddie goes on and finds Nate, recycle footage from episodes before, and goes on and tells Maddie is to tell Nate that she is a virgin, which we find out is technically a lie, but again, we're recycling footage from previous episode, saying that she's a virgin, which she actually isn't, because we go on and find out that supposedly Maddie had slept with a number of guys, because I guess if Maddie is to do anything in her entire existence, it's to go on and hook up with guys, because probably any woman on their life would have probably had done that at some point. Or maybe there are some people that actually really truly legitimately are saving themselves for marriage, and so different rungs of life. Not going on and trying to desecrate or to humiliate any woman for any of life choices that they are to go on and have, because hey, to each their own. So we go on and we have Maddie, who is to go on and find a much older man, and this guy of course is to be 40 years old, and Maddie I would believe is to be far too young for this man. But I guess Maddie just wanted to go on and have this experience. So Maddie is going on and finding a number of guys that she is to go and hump, because that is her only life existence, I guess, because that's what the story will tell you. She's to go and hump this DJ and to go on and find any number of guys, simply because she could. And then once she is to go on and find Nate, she is, of course, to lie to him. And Nate is to try to reconfirm with Maddie, like, well, are you sure? Are you absolutely pure? And Maddie is to say, uh huh, sure I am. So we go on and we have both Maddie and we have both Nate, where Maddie is to go on and watch the Robert De Niro movie Casino with Sharon Stone. Coincidentally, we are now having to recycle footage from a film that some people may have already seen. Man, this is the perfect use of our time. And so Maddie is to turn to Nate and realize that the casino version of Sharon Stone is the one woman that Maddie wants to become, because, again, heaven forbid she goes on and becomes her own woman and is to cement that she is to be her own person. No, she wants to go on and cosplay her way through life. And I can cosplay my way through life too, but then again, I am to also become my own person. I know who I am. I know if I could not give an F or give an F. Um, and so on and so forth. So Maddie is to go on here and to make the consensus that she needs the fur coat from Casino, and Nate in this film or in this episode is to eventually give that to her. How often does Maddie wear this fur coat that she is to have been given? A whole one time. A whole once. And that is to basically be the scene where Nate is to give this to her. This girl that she is to supposedly idolize herself over is to just have one whole scene where she wears this fur coat. Does anybody understand that whatsoever? What is the point of buying this fur coat if you're never going to wear it? Ever. Ever again. So, because it's probably never that cold in this show. So justifyingly, what a waste that is to buy a thing to never really use. Anyways, that's just my thought process upon this episode. So, we go on here and we, of course, have Maddie, who in much more current time and no longer in flashbacks, thank God. We go on and we have Maddie, who is to have this bruising upon her neck, which she had received upon last episode. So, Maddie is going on and trying to go on and conceal this bruising, and so she decides to go on and not wear anything called like a turtleneck or a scarf or whatever. She just goes on and slathers her neck with makeup and then goes to school and is to supposedly be on her time of the month. I want to be very sensitive. I don't want to say what is actually going on with that whole jazz, because I want to be sensitive. So, because she obviously says that legitimately happens. So, Maddie seems to be wildly different than she's ever looked in any of these episodes, going on and wearing this hoodie, going on and making it look like she's the Unabomber, weirdly. We go on and we have Maddie complaining about the air conditioning, and so the teacher is going on and saying, like, well, you can take off your hoodie and maybe you wouldn't be as hot as you are. So, we go on here and we have Maddie that is to go on and eventually have people recognize that it seems that Maddie is to have some bruising or she's trying to conceal this wound. And so we go on and we have, of course, Maddie who's going to go on and be confronted by the principal about her bruising. And so Maddie is to go on and point fingers at Nate, saying that he was the one that was to go on and do this. So Nate is to get pulled from his class. He is to go on and, I guess, be basically outed, basically cuffed here. You know what? You would think that Nate, if he didn't do this whatsoever, that he would go on and sue the out of the school for basically being humiliated the way he did if he was to not actually be the culprit. Just a thought. Just a thought. But he legitimately did do this. Like, we have evidence of previous episode to tell us that he did do this. And so, if you do the crime, you do the time, so to speak. So, we go on and we just have Nate that is weirdly, instead of, shall we go to jail, we just have Nate who's put into this one room in this school, waiting on both his father and his mother to arrive. And I guess Cal, because of the stress of this whole moment, is all of a sudden barfing in some toilet. And we also have it to where I think Cal, like, things are starting to, like, go on and have him, like, building to where possibly the stress of him seeing Jules last night, the stress of Jules kind of knowing who Cal really is, the stress of Cal consistently thinking at some point he's going to be outed by his sons, or possibly have somebody figure out what Cal is to secretly do and to arrest him at some point. We could possibly have Cal, who is to have probably thought that maybe the real reason why the cops were coming to get Cal was possibly because of what Cal had done. So we go on and we have Cal, who's to meet with Nate, and it's to go on and say, like, hey, like, did you go on and did you do this? Did you legitimately go on and put your hands on this woman? And so Nate is going on and kind of like humming and hawing about it. It feels like he's trying to say that he didn't do it. But so we go on and we have Cal here that's saying, like, well, all right. So you're going to go and you're going to walk out there and get arrested and kind of deal with this. And I'm going to be right behind you. Like, I'm going to be supporting you. And whatever happens here. I'm like, wow, that's like that's technically nice. We don't have this dad that's slapping up his son or whatever, or like ridiculing him or like just yelling at him and whatever. Because we have it to where Cal had technically told Nate that Maddie is wrong for him. And so all of a sudden we have Nate, who is walking by, seeing Natty, and he is to mouth the words, I love you. And so all of a sudden, after Nate is to be arrested, we had it to where Maddie wasn't wanting to press charges against Nate, but Maddie's mother was wanting to press charges against Nate. But we have it where Maddie is to go on and say that she loves Nate, and like, how could her mother go and arrest her lover, and blah 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 dialogue that doesn't really matter. And so, cause it's true. So Maddie is to go on and tell her mother that maybe they shouldn't have had these charges against Nate here, that it's wrong, that Maddie knows that Nate loves her, and that should be enough. So we go on and we have Nate, we have Cal, and we have the police kind of walking Nate out of here, not cuffed, let me say. So all of a sudden, Rue and Jules are looking on, and so we now re-say from Jules' mouth that, or from Rue's mouth that, like, Jules, I can't believe that you and Cal slept together. And Jules is going on and saying like, hey, don't tell a soul about that event. Because of course we have to reiterate from the previous episode that Cal was to go on and talk to Jules and is to try to say like, hey, like, please don't hurt my life, please don't hurt my family. Like, I know that you finally figured out who I am. Please don't go on and tell anybody that of what we did, and so on and so forth. Because really, it's going to happen regardless. It's going to happen anyways. That eventually someone is going to talk. Someone is going to say something at some point, right? So you would think someone would probably blackmail Cal and use it against him, because I'm waiting for that moment to happen. How that moment hasn't happened yet, I'm confused. So we go on and we have, of course, Jules telling Rue, like, don't ever tell a soul about me and Cal. Take this to your grave. Even if we have an argument and you hate me forever, like, never tell a soul about me and Cal. And Rue's like, okay, that seems like a thing to do. So we go on and we have, of course, Nate that ends up getting interrogated, questioned, and whatever, what have you. And so we also have Maddie that's going into an interrogation room just for them to cut off her hoodie and are to take pictures of her bruising so they can have it as evidence. So we go on, we have Nate who is to tell this story about Maddie from the night before, on how it's possible that Molly was to, or that Maddie was to have a Molly, a drug, that she might have been under the influence, and that anything that she is to have a story about or to say who was to do what may be incorrect. They could probably go through and drug test her and find that out themselves, and really realize that anything that Maddie is to say is to be null and void, because she may not she may have thought it was Nate, but there is no real truth to that. We also have it where Nate is to go on and tell this interrogator, this police officer, that of course Nate is to realize that Maddie was to go and possibly have several different partners. And there had been several times where both Nate and Maddie had been on breaks, and Maddie had gone on and found other lovers. And any number of those guys could have gone on and found Maddie here and came after her because Nate was not there to protect her. So, really, we could have used that one scene where Maddie was being shoved into some vehicle and Nate was to rescue her as an example of that was some fantasy probably of Nate's. We don't know if that was true or not. So we could have used that guy and said like, hey, he got away. So going into this story, we of course have a reasonable doubt for Maddie to have this case against Nate to be a very loose like thing, that there's no clear consensus that it really was Nate, because maybe Maddie just saw Nate upon that night, but she of course was drugged. So that her memory may not be clear, crystal, whatever. So we go on and we now have to cover everything else that goes on into this episode. So we go on and of course have the aftermath of most of this. So we go on and we have Rue, who is to really just be falling in love with Jules. And we, of course, have Ali telling Rue that this relationship between the two of them is probably not going to actually last. That really at some point they're going to go off to college or they're just going to move away and something's going to happen to where this relationship will not be cemented forever. So Rue has to go on and figure out how she can live without this girl and how Rue should go and find some other way to try to really be clean on her own and not having to rely on one character that is to try to make her clean. She has to go and find that herself. The reasoning for why to live on instead of ODing or hurting herself in a way of narcotics. So Rue, later along upon this episode, is to realize that Jules will not always be there. Because both Rue and Jules are having this conversation where Rue is to ask Jules, hey, do you want to sleep over again? And Jules is like, no, I think I should go and go home this time around. Which is to all of a sudden quickly have Rue realize, because she can't duct tape Jules to her body for the rest of her life, that Rue is to go on to this NA meeting and confess that she really has consistently been going here for 60 days, 90 days, whatever, but she had slipped up during that time period, and really she's actually only been clean for roughly 14 days. And that she's going on now and saying that every time that she had talked to all these people, she really just had lied. And yeah, you could probably make the clear consensus that it feels like Rue, every time that she was to talk before in her therapy sessions, it seems like she was going on and getting clean for other people and was never really getting clean for herself. Hence why she would go on and list a number of other reasons besides just getting clean for herself that she was getting clean. Going on and rattling off things about her mother or her sister or some other person besides her, giving her the reason to be clean. But then Ali would go through and poke holes on that, saying that, like, oh, so you basically effed up all these people for life, the people that you're saying that you're going to get clean for, but you're not actually clean. What a bleh. Anyways, so it feels that Rue is to be much more in a happier place, which is great. And so we go to the skating rink where, or this, if anybody is to ever heard of this place called Cheapskate, like it kind of feels like a roller rink or whatever. So, probably not a lot of people have heard of that because if anything, you might have heard things on the news about Cheapskate because that at some point is an unsavory place, for whatever reason. So there's been some times because I live nearby a Cheapskate, where of course there has been some drug stuff there or some kind of things going on with that place, some unsavory things, let's just say. So we go on here and we of course have Jules, who I think is talking to Lexi here, the one character that I really think needs some more marinating time upon for me to care about her, and I wish they would have a backstory about this girl that doesn't feel like she's a lazy slog of a character, and maybe has a very interesting story compared to everyone else, because we don't really hear much about her throughout this whole entire show. So we go on, and of course we have Lexi going and telling Jules that it seems that Rue is a lot happier, and it has everything to do with Jules. To where I think that's when Jules has realized that maybe she should go on and leave Rue or not be with Rue so often. And also, it seems that Jules is to be looking at Nate and is to find something that is to possibly be love. We're not sure. We're not quite sure yet. We're not really sure about what that's really defined yet, but it seems kind of weird if that really is what it is. So, because of the way of which that Nate is to want to control Jules and to want to just uh, almost blackmail her at some point. Uh, what a weird duck of story. So we go on and we push along here, and so we also have to deal with a certain number of characters. Cassie and Mike, the aftermath of the last episode. Or Mike? McKay. That's what I was trying to say there. So, we of course have Cassie and McKay, where it seems that Cassie had gone on and found Daniel, and it seems that Cassie is immediately having her and Daniel, because they had spent a merry-go-round together. All of a sudden, it seems that Daniel is laying it on thick and kissing on her, and she's like, you know what, I think I have a boyfriend right now. And so it seems like there might be some love triangle going on. Daniel might be pushing on to want to be Cassie's lover. So, but instead we have it where Cassie's going and talking it out with McKay, realizing what a mistake he made, and is to go on and apologize to Cassie about what he had said to Nate, saying that they are just friends. Where McKay realizes that really he should have gone on and corrected Nate, or corrected what he said to Nate, but he decided not to. So Cassie is also apologizing for basically being with another man, but McKay, of course, asks Cassie, it's like, well, what are you apologizing for? And Cassie says nothing. So, man, we have it where, like, I think one part of this relationship is kind of being honest, and the other person is just going on and just like, like, I guess I can do whatever I want and get away with it, because that's probably what's going to happen in further episodes. So, we also go on here, and we of course have Kat in this episode. Kat, of course, is to talk to Ethan, and of course Ethan is to ask, like, hey, like, I text you a number of times, why haven't you responded? And so it seems like Ethan is to be a nice guy, but really Kat doesn't really understand what his motives are. Maybe he's like not to be shown kissing another girl, and what, like, maybe Kat should go on and ask for context of what that whole thing was from the night before. But instead, Kat just is to realize that, oh, like, this is just to be another guy that is to be really nice, but maybe Kat's not really into a nice guy. Maybe she wants to go on and just find these kind of dirty men, like in the literal sense. Like, these guys don't look like they're to be like the cleanest guys, so to speak. So really, Ethan is to go on and ask Kat. It's like, well, hey, why are you so mean? Like, why are you just kind of being the way you are towards me? And Kat has no answer. So we just go on, instead of having Kat going and finding the nice guy, she's going on and finding, instead of Mr. Right, she's going on and trying to find Mr. Right now. So Kat goes on and is to realize that her and her session with Luke was to be the fact that Luke had been with just a number of people, and that was the real reason why Kat was to go on and do what she did at this carnival, because I think Kat is just looking for experienced guys. So we have at one point where Kat is going on and talking about this to Johnny Unite, because we're still having this going on here, and we of course have Kat, who's telling this guy what to pay for her next. So, but we go on and we have Kat, who is to meet a guy named Trevor, and the guy, of course, from before that used to, or that was to be this store clerk that I could not tell if he worked there at that shop or not because there was no name tag, there was no apron, there was no nothing. He just says, "Oh yeah, I work here," and how could you confirm that? Uh, you couldn't. So we go on, and we of course have Kat, who's to meet up with Trevor, and we have Trevor kind of making small talk, and Kat is like, "Yeah, well, I kind of know what you really want out of this, so let's just kind of push on to get to that." So Kat is probably just gonna have a lot of meaningless relationships or meaningless uh, kind of thrills, so that way she can go on and like feel fulfilled about her life. But we also had that conversation or that kind of inner monologue with Kat mentioning how like she could probably see herself as fat, which I don't like to say that kind of word, but Kat is to realize it's like, well, yeah, but like that doesn't bother her. That she's to be fairly confident in the fact that she may be that kind of person, and so that other people are kind of seeing her as an attractive woman because she is to go on and be confident about herself, which I can understand that. I can understand like that eventually going on and having that I could give a rip uh, could maybe seem that all of a sudden like, ooh, like this guy is not as worried. This guy is to go on and be a lot more confident that he is, which wouldn't be the case. But like, look at the Ewan McGregor movie Deception, where we have Ewan McGregor going on and just being this guy like so in desperation, and we have Hugh Jackman's character that is to go on and get him out of that desperation to then find this club, let's just say, where he's to go through a number of different women. And then he is to go on and find that confidence where all of a sudden people who would not realize that this guy exists, all of a sudden we have women that it's like, I want a piece of that because this guy is like strutting. He's walking like he's the 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 Wang of the walk, so to speak, the Johnson of the walk, so to speak. So we have all of a sudden this guy who is to be more confident, which in a mirror of things we have Kat being the same way. Where all of a sudden it seems that she is to go on and be this much more confident person because of her being able to realize that she could get any man at any time. So we go on and we have Kat who is to go into this car with Trevor, and Trevor is to unzip himself, and Kat is to go on and blow Trevor away. To where we have Trevor who is to like, oh my god, that is the very best that I've ever had it. And so Kat is to go on and walk off, realizing that, like another satisfied customer, so to speak. That sounds weird to say, but like she didn't get paid for this. But on top of it, it's just like, are we just going to have that where Kat is going to be only that kind of girl to any number of guys, and then she might eventually have a reputation for herself, and then she will probably go on and be this girl that really is to only be that for this show. So there is that, I guess. So wow. So anything left? We had Cal, who is to go on and meet with this guy named Banico, whatever goofy name that this guy had, as well as his kind of interesting attire. Like, I won't lie. This guy had some kind of like interesting haircut, interesting, just kind of like silver skirt, something rather. Nah, interesting for the show. So Cal goes on and is to meet with this guy, And instead of them just going right to the what of course Cal is really paying him for, all of a sudden Cal is wanting some kind of comfort or wanting to just talk. And so this guy's like, well, okay, I kind of get paid either way. So Cal is just to really get comforted here and start to ask um, really about his kids, on how maybe Cal could think that maybe what he's doing here is really affecting his kids, and he's having this real like midlife crisis or something like that, where maybe him like doing all this mystery and hiding who he really is really just affecting his family. And so we have that kind of dialogue there. And so Cal is to go on and walk off after this whole session of him talking to this guy, to having us going on and finding that Nate is to send a text to Maddie saying like, hey, meet me at this certain place. Having Maddie going on and to download this one app forcibly, to then have Maddie meet up with Nate because it feels that Maddie has no one to turn to, because Maddie is to go on and just be driving and crying, and is to desperately go and text Kat, and Kat is to go on and say, it's like, well, I'm really busy, like I'm with some other guy, and Maddie's like, well, can't you just blow him off? Like she'll be doing some kind of blowing, but it won't be blowing off. So Kat is like, no, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, like in all honesty, like for Maddie, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to help this girl either. Because really, if like there's certain characters that I think Maddie is that person where it's like, well, like if I say jump, you say how high, and really there's certain times where there's some people that I just wouldn't like uh be going and just like, hey, I'm doing this right now, like I couldn't be bothered to go and uh jump and just go and do this right now, I'm too busy, uh or I have something that I've already planned to do and that's all I'm going to do. Like there's certain times where eventually, like for a job example, there's certain times where you're like, I'm always going to reserve this one day off. There's a whole reason behind that, and I don't feel I should explain that. And then all of a sudden, the one day every single week, they're like, hey, that one day, like, can you work that day? I'm like, no. Could you work like the morning of that day? Well, yeah. Like, so what is it that you're? I'm like, why do I need to tell people of why I need that day off? Why can't I just have that day off? Well, I'm like, so it's like that whole thing where, like, if you had some other activity that is to take up that whole entire day, and that's the only day that you do this thing, whatever it is. Because really, for me, it was simply like, oh, I'm going and I'm watching this television show that is to premiere upon this day, and I would feel that I could go on and watch that show and be like, this is great. Like I have one day that, or one slot of time where I can watch this show and watch it on TV, and I don't want to go and work during that time. That was simply my reasoning, and they couldn't accept that. It was just like, why wouldn't you just, like, because it's on TV? Because I can conveniently watch it on TV? Because I don't want to go and download an app so I'd watch it later? Because I don't have the time to watch it later. I want to watch it when it's on TV. How do you not get that? I don't want to go and buy the Blu-ray and DVD box set of this film or this show later on in life, because I want the ability to see it right then on the day it premieres. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. So that was the whole thing. And like my job was just like, well, why can't you just work that one time period? I'm like, because that's the one, like it just got to the point where I was like, you know what? Like, I don't want full-time hours, I want part-time hours. I only want to work during the day, and that's it. Like, it just got to that point where it's like, okay, like, I'm going to dictate when I want to work, and they are going to have to accept that. And it just gone on and just like, well, can you? I'm like, no. So it just became that kind of thing. Um, and then hence since, like, there would just be a lot of jobs where I just got on to do, and they were just on call jobs that were why. So, um, so yeah, so we really just have it where, like, that's to really just be the real wrapping up here, because Maddie is to go on with Nate to this apartment, and that's to be the end of this episode. And really, it's just, this episode was boring. Uh, this episode has nothing in it. I don't even want to repeat the dialogue of which that Rue is to even come up with that nothing, um, simply because it's a nothing bit of dialogue. So with that said, I think I'm gonna get out of here, call it a day for this one, and go on and do Archive 81 or some other thing that is to probably get some kind of something. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.